Hey, Danny, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Well, I am in the software space. I have been in that space for about 15 years and started out at a sort of a large company, Oracle, doing sales there inside, then moved into field sales. And then for about the last 8 years or so, I've been at a company called Splunk and focus right now on the government side of things and helping customers get value out of the product. And
Oh,
before that, spent about 6 or 6.5 years covering sort of commercial accounts in the Mid-Atlantic area.
yeah. Why sales? What do you like about sales?
The competitiveness, I
Uh,
think, is what I enjoy. I kind of grew up an athlete, so played soccer competitively through college, and just anything I do, I'm pretty competitive at, and so sales allows me to sort of push myself, work hard, and I like helping people. Honestly, a lot of sales is sort of driving success and seeing customers be successful, helping them, and I enjoy that side of it as well.
and what did you study in school, college?
So I went to school for marketing, a small school in Virginia called Longwood University. About I don't know 6,000 kids now.
It's the
Um,
third oldest,
what's that?
Longwood.
Third oldest?
Yeah, I checked it out before the interview.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. It used to be an all girls school. It used to be a big teacher school actually,
Was it?
and then they kind of created a nice business school. And yeah, so graduated with a marketing degree, and it's nice because that kind of gave me some insight into the creativity I think that you
Yeah.
can use in sales. So it's been really beneficial in my career.
And that's it because marketing is probably the closest most schools have to a sales education. It's not that close, but
Agreed. Yeah, and there was actually a sales class that I took there, which was great. They really opened my eyes to the possibility of sales as a career, and I've seen a few more universities now offering sales as actually a major, I believe, which
yeah.
I commend them for. I'm actually going to look into it a little bit to see what curriculum they're teaching. Hopefully, they're focusing on the customer success side of things and making it all about the other person.
And what was it like going into like a huge company like Oracle?
I was so young. I actually so I started for about 8 months in recruiting, IT
Yeah.
recruiting, and I did that because I wanted to sort of understand the lingo, the vocabulary, how org structures were set up in companies. Um, and so that was a very small company. And then I went to Oracle, and I was kind of just in a dial for dollars sort of mode. So I was running campaigns for people who had quota, and my quota was just trying to find pipeline. Um, and it was great because starting that early, they had so much great training at a big company like that, and it was very go go go
Yeah.
during those days. So it was, I had to kind of work to stay at the front of the pack, and so I think got a lot of good foundational sort of
Skills.
skills exactly, and then a lot of great training from the
Yeah.
company. So
And then you moved to the outside. What was the major lesson there?
yeah, it's very different than inside for
Yeah,
sure.
it is.
Yeah. And there was some getting used to. When I first went into the outside role, I definitely had an adjustment of being in front of somebody and being able to talk to them about the value you can deliver versus over the phone. Over the phone, maybe you're a little more prepped, whereas in person, you have to be a little more, off the cuff, prepared. The other thing too that I figured out is when I first started sort of going from inside sales, because I was able to do like a little bit of a hybrid role, go into the field every once in a while. And when I went out, I noticed that I wasn't technically strong enough. So I
Yeah.
think I had to also increase my technical skills because you didn't always have an engineer with you. And so I needed to sort of maintain an ability to stay credible, be, intelligent, talking about the right stuff. And so that was also a big thing that I learned in going from that inside to outside sales. And I wouldn't trade it. I did it first going from Oracle inside sales to Oracle outside sales for about 3.5 years. And that really set me up for the foundation of the rocket ship that I joined in Splunk in around 2012.
And help us with that because I got to imagine without a CS degree, or maybe you had a natural curiosity about IT and software, how did you learn all of that?
A lot of listening.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think I listened a lot because I just didn't know I didn't know anything. I didn't know enough. And so any of the training that came out, and I always promoted this, any of the training that came out, I just dove into super deep and really sucked it up. And then any of the engineers that I knew were well regarded, I spent a lot of time with them and just
Yeah.
asked them questions. And when they were on demos, listened, because I sort of said to myself, hey, look, they're not always going to be with me. So the next meeting, I want to be able to take it to step 3 and then
Right.
have the engineer only come in and step 4 and maybe beyond, right? But the further that I could sort of take a cycle on my own, technically, the more self-service I was, and the less I needed to sort of rely on other people's schedules. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to be a jerk. It was just a way to scale. I was able to to
Right.
to be a lot more effective that way.
That's it. Because a lot of people just stick with the four-legged sales call. And the problem is if you share the other two legs, then you're gated on their availability. And you may not have one assigned to you. You may have to, pick from a pool of people, and then you don't have the mojo. And I've seen too many reps tell me, "Oh, I don't want to learn the bitsy bitesy stuff. I want to stay at the." And it's like, well, good luck, unless you're having a lot of those meetings. You need to understand why they're buying you versus doing nothing or buying something else.
Yeah. And I always looked at it as you had to stand out, because there's
Yes.
so many sort of, I'll call it average to below average salespeople out there who can just sort of step into something, and then they change jobs every year and a half maybe, or and it's just because they're just going to the next. Versus if you are above average and you're able to prescribe, I love using the word prescribe. If you can prescribe to your customers how to do the right thing to be successful without relying on anybody else, which again, you always need that village, and I always talk about it, they're critical, but the further you can take it, you just stand out, because there's so many average to below average. And putting that customer first, making sure success is critical, guiding them, prescribing to them, just the lost art, I feel like, in the software world.
Now, Splunk has been on a rocket ship, but it probably wasn't like that when you arrived, was it?
It was pretty good. I mean, I joined, yeah, I joined right after the IPO. So they went IPO in April of 12. I joined in October of 12. And uh I mean, it was grindy for sure, but there was so much excitement, and like it was such a cool thing that we were doing. We were solving problems that people weren't able to solve before. So those early days, we had a few leads coming in, and it
Yeah.
was definitely not totally dry, but there was a lot of prospecting too, early days, and pounding the phones and not being afraid of no. And I had basically the whole East Coast when I kind of first started. So flying on planes, all over the place. And then you kind of get into this rhythm. And once you get into that rhythm, it just it just goes. And that's, I think, what happened to us is we had, there's so many people even before I joined that really worked hard to get it to where it got to. And then all of a sudden, they had a great onboarding program. And then the market started to kind of catch on to this big data concept. We kind of got our mojo. We didn't change too many things. And that's when it just kept tumbling, kept rolling downhill. So it was a lot of fun. Still is a
And
lot of fun.
what do you think separated you from kind of those okay reps? Because I'm sure you saw a lot of okay reps at a big company.
Yeah. Um, I think I care a lot. I care a lot about what I am responsible for.
Yeah.
And I sort of try to maintain a very high level of service and just do the right thing, and not leave anyone kind of behind. I'll leave my customers behind. And I'm technical as well, so I can sort of go very far into a cycle without having to rely on anybody. So the combination of, somebody even told me, I care too much sometimes, which I don't think you can care too much, but maybe. And then being technical, I think those two things have really allowed me to, um, I don't have a very fortunate career in
Yeah.
software.
Yeah, because the caring thing, I think it has to be applicable at different stages, right? When you're in the beauty contest, it's you against column B and C, you got to care a lot. But when you're prospecting, if you care too much, you're going to really burn yourself out pretty quick.
True. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I probably experienced that a little bit. I had what I like to call a sabbatical in 2019 from Splunk. Yeah. It wasn't a true sabbatical, but it was a sabbatical from Splunk. And I did. I just cared a lot, and I wasn't kind of getting it back, and it hurt. It did, man. It really hurt, and it messed me up pretty good mentally. And I'm so thankful to a lot of people to have kind of gotten back into a really good place. But you're right. There is a part where you could hurt yourself, probably. That's a good point.
Right. I mean, you see it in sports all the time, especially like in tennis. Somebody throws the racket, they just, you're right on the edge between control and no control.
Yeah. Yep.
And you have to kind of pull yourself back sometimes. Now, did you get to the point of burnout, or did you just need a break?
I think I potentially approached that burnout line. Yeah. I think I was working so hard, and I wanted to make it work so bad. And yeah, I got to a point where I was like, man, what did I do? What did I get myself into here? And actually the last year has been phenomenal, because, and I keep saying I'm going to write a blog on this, but for all my life, I've been really into working out, just, I think, through sports. And so physical fitness was a constant area that I could relieve the stress of of sales. And I still keep it up. I mean, I'm very, very active, but I've recently, thanks to actually an application, a guy that you should check out, this guy, Russ from Vision Pursue. I've worked in mental training now. So, in addition to physical fitness, I spend a lot of time on mental fitness and training myself mentally to handle different things and control the controllable. And there's a bunch of acronyms that, Russ uses to help you kind of, when you're in these situations, apply this acronym and get into a better mental state. So it's especially with all the stuff with COVID going on now, I think mental training is all the more important, in addition to your, the physical fitness side of things. So
right, because you don't get a lot of the camaraderie, a lot of the, sharing what's going wrong with other people. You're kind of isolated, even if you do have, I don't know if you have a family or not, but you don't have the amount of social interaction. Certainly not the travel.
You don't, and I've had to make it, and that's one of the other things. I've made it every day. I have an 8:30 call with people on my team. I don't manage anybody, but we're on the same team, covering the government. And every day at 8:30 we get on the phone, and it's not to talk business. It's just to say, how was your night? How you feeling? How does the day look? But it creates this office type atmosphere that you had every day you went to the office, because you saw somebody at the water cooler, you saw somebody, walking in the hall, and you're able to chat. That's our sort of camaraderie right now. And it's been such a savior, because we're able to check on each other mentally, physically, cover for each other. It brings us to be a really tight unit. And, it's been awesome. It's our motivation every day, getting up at 8:30 and doing it, but we all really enjoy it. And it's been very, very helpful.
And also, you're not covering the easiest customer in the world.
In the government, yeah. yeah, there's definitely some challenges, and the interesting thing with this role too now is that I'm a little out of direct line sales. So before I came, back here to Splunk, I was in direct line sales. So I was legal negotiations, chasing that purchase order, just grinding. Now I'm supporting reps, so a little bit of a specialist or overlay role, which has been great for me to learn a new skill. But also just, same thing with reps, right? I mean, I remember as a rep, I wasn't necessarily always the easiest person to deal with. You try, because that you're gonna have to deal with them again. But so it's been interesting, sort of even just talking through dealing with different situations. But there's a lot of, what I figured out is there's a lot of things I applied as a rep with my customers that I'm applying as a specialist to my customers who are now the reps.
Yeah.
a lot of similarities in terms of how we're trying to scale the business, in terms of how you deal with people, how you want to be dealt with. It's eerily, I mean, there's obviously a lot of differences too, but a lot of the same concepts apply, whether you're dealing with customers or you're dealing with reps as your customers. And it all comes back to being a good human, really, and doing the right thing.
Right. Because you have to have that rapport built before you need it.
Yep.
Because by the time you need it, if it's not there, there's a lot of finger pointing, it's too late to build it.
Agreed. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
build that trust. Yep.
Yeah. And given that you're not a technical person by nature, by training, how do you keep up? Because most reps look at it as like, I don't want to write code. It's like, no, you don't have to write code, but you have to learn the vocabulary, learn the competition, learn the lockouts, the distinctions, and where they
Yeah.
fit and where they don't.
Yeah. I read a lot. I'm a huge reader, whether it's, and sometimes it's LinkedIn, which can suck you in. So, I
Right.
have to be careful with that. But if you do LinkedIn right, there is a lot of good information on there to learn and educate yourself. I read a lot of, I'll call it just, like CIO magazine, or just industry sort of trade information. And then I read, sort of the non-technical stuff too, which I think is very important. Like I read the Wall Street Journal every single day. Just sort of understanding what's going on from everything from a political perspective down to, manufacturing, down to, finance. And that allows me to apply those concepts that I read in CIO magazine or the sort of technical sort of reads to the business side of things, which is another really important element, maybe the third of a successful sales rep: caring, technical, and then being able to apply your technology to the key business initiatives or strategies going on within a company. And a lot of that reading I do on the Wall Street Journal allows my brain to think both business and then shift it to the technology side when I'm reading about new technologies and what they are, and how they're helping the world. So
Right. Because you have to be the translator of that technical value to how does it affect what they're doing, their mission.
yep.
Right. And when you sell it to the government, it's like they're not profit motive. There's more political motive, success motive, mission motive.
Correct.
And that can be different.
It can. Yeah, and harder, I think, because
Much
when I was,
harder.
yeah, because when I was covering publicly traded companies, I wouldn't say it was a little bit easier. They had a quarterly, earnings call. They had
It's more
usually,
transparent.
yeah, they had an annual investors day. They had an annual report. And I'll tell this story because I think it's one of my best ones ever. So I actually, when I was covering a company, I went and attended their investor day, and I sat through their investor day in New York City and took meticulous notes the entire day from beginning to end. And then I came back home into the office and I applied all the strategic initiatives that they were focused on, and how the software that I was selling would, you know, uh, be a catalyst for them accomplishing that quicker, or driving efficiencies with those initiatives. And I created a PowerPoint from that I then used as my sort of piece to go around this company and say, hey, look, this is why we are right to partner with on so many levels, because here's how we tie to your most critical strategic initiatives. And it was a pretty cool moment, sitting with a bunch of analysts, just kind of tech nerd, software sales guy, but really having it applied back was awesome. And a story I like to tell is a great way to really dial into the business side of things.
Right. Because otherwise they put you in the who are you, what do you do commodity category, not what do I get out of it.
Correct.
That's why they spend money.
Yep. You got to show them why they care. You got to show them why it impacts them.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have visibility to a lot of reps. What do you see most reps doing wrong? Without outing anyone.
Yeah. No. I would say, probably not tying back to those initiatives. Why is it important? And again, it's harder in the government where I cover it now, but just not putting yourself almost in the customer's shoes.
Yeah.
and saying, hey, look, I've got a couple things that are coming in front of me right now to spend money on. You know, how am I as the rep going to make that person want to spend money with me, and why is it going to help them, right? And this goes back to helping the customer too. How can you make them a hero by what they buy from you? So I think that is probably one of the biggest, and you don't need that all the time, right? Smaller deals don't necessarily have to tie back to that all the time.
Right.
But if you do, it makes it a lot easier, even if it's a smaller deal, because they can make themselves look good internally, and then when you drive success with that sort of proposal, you look like a hero with them, and then that's a really good partnership for many years to come if you can do it that way.
And how about, like, I mean, the government's typically either early adopter, like in the Intel space, or a laggard in most of the traditional, I don't know which agencies you sell to, but, and they have long-standing relationships and are probably keeping a lot of mainframe companies alive. Because changing is risky and expensive, two things the government doesn't like to do. How do you, like, block out or edge your way in against, like, those huge competitors?
You have to make sure you have something that I think is personally beneficial to the individual, right? So a lot of the things that we're talking about now specifically is, my role is, we're talking about Splunk Cloud, which is basically Splunk as a service. So no longer running Splunk on your own, but consuming it from us. We run it all for you. And there are tough conversations to have there, because sometimes in government, people's daily lives are built on running Splunk. And so when you're trying to sell Splunk as a service, it's like, oh man, you're potentially taking away my job. So you have to really sort of be genuine and passionate to that individual who may be a blocker. Like, look, this job is not going to be there long term. The job that is going to be there is you going to the front side of the equation and getting value out of the data. So
Using
let
it.
me help. Yeah, let me help you retrain yourself to figure out how to use the data, and let's go, make you a superhero within your organization. So making it, personally about them and how it's beneficial to them, and then making it, again, tie back to that mission, in the government's case, but you got to make it personal, because if there's not a genuine win for that individual,
There's a loss.
there's a loss. So should you even be doing it? Right? Exactly. So
Yeah. And what's the hardest part of your job?
I think not having control in this role.
Yeah.
I'm so used to being in control, being the rep that's the quarterback, and now I'm call it, the running back or the tight end who's kind of being told to run a play.
Yeah.
But it's been good. It's been healthy to sort of work on quality of life a little bit, for sure, in that regard. But also sort of just experience a different part of the team where I'm the tight end and not the quarterback. So there was an initial sort of, that loss of control was tough, but you figure it out, and you just play a really good running back or a really good tight end, and you make the team better if you do your job well.
And has it been an issue? Do you still live in Richmond? Is that
I
your
do.
home?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a secondary city, and there's a couple of accounts down there, but most of it isn't there, right? Has that
Right.
been an issue for you?
I was very lucky in that, when I first joined Splunk, they took a gamble on me living down here,
Yeah.
because it was not in DC. Now, at that time, I was covering a much broader part of the East Coast, so I was kind of a little more central to getting down to South Florida or getting to Georgia or Raleigh, um, but as the years went on, the drive up to DC 2 hours, or Baltimore, 3 hours, can definitely be a little taxing. But I honestly, when I took the job, I said to myself, I said to my wife and to my kids, I said, look, I'd rather take the brunt of the work and let us have a really nice life down here, because we moved from Northern Virginia, but it's about 25% cheaper down in Richmond.
Yeah.
And I was able to have, we were able to have a family. We had 2 more kids after I joined, and my wife is fortunate enough to sort of stay home with the kids, and she's just a phenomenal mom. But I sort of made that decision. I said, hey, I'm okay with that, because it's going to be the best thing for my family. But it does get a little tiring, but you get used to it, man. I mean, you get up early, you beat the traffic, you come home a little late. It's kind of just part of the deal.
Yeah. Gives you plenty of time to listen to the the
To the
headspace and
podcast and to the
yeah,
headspace. That's right. A lot of audible books and
yeah,
podcasts, and then a lot of family calls too. Like I'll kill time, and I have a big family, so extended family. I'll call and just catch up with them, which is, it's always nice keeping in touch with people that way. You know.
yeah. And traveling today, well, not just this year, but it's gotten so much easier. You get extra batteries for your phone and everything, chargers and stuff, and cell coverage is pretty consistent.
Yeah.
That didn't exist, even 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah. True.
It was really
Very true.
sketchy. Well, what advice would you give like a junior rep on getting into, kind of a very sophisticated technology like Splunk that's also enterprise?
Stay curious.
Uh,
Stay curious. Ask a lot of questions and be coachable. I had great coaches, and you know, and who were very humble but super bright, and they took me under their wing because I was open to being coached, and I stayed humble, and so potentially I even lost some of that. I've definitely gained it back through my experience, but it's easy to lose it when you have a lot of success,
yeah.
and you read a lot about it now. It's like, man, that's the worst thing you can do, is lose some of your humility. So stay humble, stay coachable. I'm a big Yankees fan, so Derek Jeter had a great quote, I think, when he left, which is, I may not have been the best player on the field, but I was always the hardest worker. And that's sort of something I try to live by as well. I may not be the brightest bulb, but you're not going to outwork me. So stay a
Yeah.
hard worker as well.
And on that caring thing, how do you know when you're caring too much? Or
I don't think you can, when you have a customer, I don't think you can care too much. I really don't, because I don't know. There's a, go ahead.
but let's say the customer needs or wants something and internally it's not working. You can kind of step on some eggshells, have sharp elbows.
Mm-hmm.
And if the caring pushes the emotion, it's like throwing the racket or yelling at the referee.
Yeah. Yeah. And I maybe got, that could have been another thing I got caught up in is, the changes that did happen were so different than when I first started. And so I was used to caring and getting things for the customer a certain way. And then we were being told you can't do that anymore. I'm like, what? Like throwing elbows potentially, So yeah, maybe it's like care to the point where you can still come up with a workable solution, even if it's not something you're used to doing in the past. Because I don't think anybody wants to screw the customer over necessarily. There's just a different way you got to do things potentially.
I guess you just got to catch yourself. Just refuse to do stupid stuff,
Yeah,
or let your emotions take it over.
that's probably better than stupid. Yeah, don't let your emotions take over. I agree. I agree. Continue to try to think rationally why the decision's being made.
Yeah, cool. Hey, it's been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, pretty active, and well, pretty active. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my only social media. I've kind of gotten off of all of it except for LinkedIn. So that's a great way to find me. And I appreciate you having me on, Brian. This is a great conversation. Again, I'm super flattered that you had me, and good luck with all you do.